Anita Brown Graham, welcome back to North Carolina Now.
Thank you, Mitch. It's wonderful to be with you again.
Now, as the director of the Institute for Emerging Issues, one of the biggest events that comes up every year is the Emerging Issues Forum,
Absolutely.
which celebrating its 30th anniversary. Congratulations once again.
Thank you. It's pretty amazing.
What is your topic of this year and why this particular topic?
This year we're going to be talking about innovation reconstructed. And the question of why that topic is one that people keep asking. If you talk to any innovator in this state or beyond, they'll tell you two things. First of all, they get that innovation is the driver of our economy. They also respect that they didn't become these drivers on their own. They are standing on the shoulders of people, of institutions, and of systems. We want to explore those shoulders. We want to say, North Carolina, we know that we have done some things well in the last 30 years as we've gone through many forums that focused on innovation. But there's something about this moment that requires us to stop and reconsider whether what we have in North Carolina will be sufficient to take us through the next 30 years.
So what will be some of the topics that will be addressed?
Well, obviously, it's going to be important to talk a little bit about the urgency of right now. We're going to spend a little bit of time helping North Carolina to see where we are in terms of the innovation economy. There are places in North Carolina that are doing really well. Certainly, the Research Triangle Park stands at the helm of that list. It's also true that over the last 15 years, there are more and more places in North Carolina that have come to join the innovation economy. But perhaps surprising to some of your audience, certainly will be true for some of our audience in the forum, North Carolina is actually not one of the leading states in terms of innovation. We're actually in the middle of the pack. And as we looked at the data across 50 states, what was clear was North Carolina would not be a leader if it did not change its current trajectory. We would stay in the middle of the pack. And so what we want to talk about over the 2 days on February 9th and 10th is what will it take for North Carolina to become a leading state across the state of North Carolina in the innovation economy.
Now, usually at the Emerging Issues Forum, you have several heavy hitters to come in as speakers, and I know this one will not disappoint. Who are some of the speakers you're going to have this year?
Let me give you some highlights. There isn't a jurisdiction in North Carolina that I know of that isn't thinking really hard about how to create spaces that foster and catalyze innovation. Those may be innovation districts, they may be research parks, they may be accelerators, or they may be incubators. We have searched all over North Carolina, all over the country, in fact, all over the world, and we are inviting to be with us Miguel Barcelo, who is the conceptual architect of the world-famed District 22 in Barcelona, to come and share how you actually create these kinds of economic engine spaces. We also want to talk a little bit about what sort of financing capacities are important. And so we have a number of people who are offering new ways of investing who will be with us. I don't know very many people who think about innovation who aren't now really sort of afraid of what some of the security risks might be through our technological information systems. You might worry about what it means to save something to your Google Drive, but what you really are worried about is what it means that there are all of these companies and other organizations that have your personal information. We're pretty excited that we have Admiral Mike Rogers, who's the head of the National Security Agency, who's going to be with us, who will talk to us a little bit about what a risk of exposure is, what some opportunities might be for mitigation, and how we move forward in a world where cybersecurity is one of those things we're just going to have to think about each day.
Now, with your theme, Innovation Reconstructed, when you look at the Emerging Issues Forum, there have been innovations at the forum as well. So talk about some of the innovations that have taken place within the forum itself.
Well, thanks for acknowledging that. You know, I'm amused sometimes to hear people say, we used to come to the forum just for the speakers. Now we sort of come wanting to see what's going to be the new innovation of the activity itself. This year, as we have done in past years, we will live stream the forum. So people will have an opportunity not just to see the forum, but to really actively participate in the forum. We've developed a new app that is going to make it a lot easier for people to participate, and so we're looking forward to the experience being much the same for people who are on the outside as it is for the inside. But there are two other things that we are doing this year that make it really worth your while if you're inside the forum. The first is people constantly say to us, we're just not getting enough. We want some time with your speakers. And so 2 activities that will take place at the end of the forum really excite me this year. First of all of our funders, those people who are creating opportunities for investments, have agreed to meet with any innovators who are participants in the forum to talk to them about their ideas and to hear whether they would be able to invest in them. So that will be a huge opportunity for the innovators. But for the innovators of the future, the students who are going to be part of the forum audience, there's something that's equally, if not more exciting. Ray Kurzweil, who's one of our speakers, is the chief engineer at Google. He is recognized as sort of the Thomas Edison of our day, and he has agreed to a private meeting with 100 students who will be at the forum to listen to their ideas and to share his sense of where innovation is going in the short term. I suspect that's going to be a very special moment for those students.
Now, I understand that the Emerging Issues Forum is already sold out.
It is.
But remind us of the dates, and perhaps folks who want to still find out what's going on at the forum, what can they do?
You got it. So the forum will be held at the Raleigh Convention Center on February 9th and 10th. It will be live streamed at www.emergingissues.org. And so I really encourage all viewers to join us for as much or as little of the forum as you can. I really also encourage viewers to think about how we're going to start taking the ideas that come out of this forum, how we're going to vote and prioritize those ideas, and how we're going to enhance North Carolina's innovation capacity together.
Anita Brown Graham, always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for your insights and much success on the forum.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine. Look forward to seeing you at the forum.